gon' tune in cause it's showtime. Go ahead and call the gang up for the one time. Rap food rhyme, got them on the line. And my life's still great, I'm doing just fine. Hands up.
The main topic that I want to discuss for our video game part of the episode is Warner Brothers Games plans to focus more on their core franchises, which include Game of Thrones, Harry Potter, DC, and Mortal Kombat. The article that I was reading for GameSpot said that if Warner Brothers can execute, they expect gaming to bring meaningful growth to the company in the years to come. And they're thinking that if they execute this, that they'll start getting returns in 2025, 2026, and 2027. They said they have no idea how the gaming landscape will evolve over time, but he believes owning the IP and the game studios could help Warner Brothers Discovery succeed where others might not. The hot take on this is if Warner Brothers Games focus on these four IPs as far as gaming, will this make them notable competitors in the gaming industry?
Here's the thing. Warner Brothers has a legacy with Mortal Kombat and then Batman because of Arkham. Game of Thrones, I feel like that's where they have a lot of freedom to do great. But it depends on what they do. Like Game of Thrones had a Telltale game, and you know how Telltale games are, right? Like that.
Yeah.
Pause and pick a choice. And I think they had another one. I think there was another one that was like an action adventure style game.
Ron froze. But I feel like I would agree with his statement that they have a lot of freedom with Game of Thrones. Honestly, if they make a Game of Thrones game, I would prefer them to do something along the lines of Hogwarts Legacy, where the story and the setting is pre what we know from the series. I feel like what got most of my interest, what I enjoyed the most about Hogwarts Legacy is the fact that it didn't touch the lore that we already knew. Like there were Easter
Fair enough.
eggs, but what really grabbed me was the fact that we are experiencing a time period of the Wizarding World that predates Harry Potter, Voldemort, and all the stuff that we know. And I feel like they should take the same route with Game of Thrones. And I feel like they could make a nice fantasy, something alongside what The Witcher has done, and execute a AAA game.
No, I agree. I don't want to be playing as no Jon Snow in a
Right.
Game of Thrones video game. I don't want to play as Daenerys. Honestly, either if they want to go far back, if they want to go very far forward, I don't know what direction they would want to go. But Game of Thrones is such a traditional fantasy world that would be easy, honestly.
And it would be so easy for them to basically make it the same way as Hogwarts Legacy makes it an RPG. If we could, make our character, even if you want to include the houses from the series, but just make different characters, their ancestors, I feel like that will still work because you're still allowing the people to, based on what they see on the series, we all know what house we would, want to be in or who we would want to align with. So keep the basis, the foundation of it there, but the story of it doesn't have to touch what we already know.
Now, the thing is, do we trust Warner Brothers to execute? I would say, because technically the studio behind Hogwarts Legacy, was that directly Warner Brothers? I thought the studio had another name.
It was
it like
Portkey
Portkey?
Games.
So are they like a sub studio to Warner Brothers?
They could be. Because
I like
also in the article that I read is that they talked about the fact that they own their gaming studios in comparison to Disney, who has been contracting out to
right.
game studios to make games for them.
And here's the thing. If they invest enough, because a Game of Thrones RPG, because I see why you're comparing it to Hogwarts Legacy, but in terms of how the RPG would play or look, it will probably be more so synonymous to like a hybrid Witcher, Dragon Age, Shadows of Mordor esque game. There's some other old school RPGs like the Lord of the Rings game, but that would require a lot of resources. If they actually made a solid, because to execute Game of Thrones, it would have to be like an open world RPG type of game, or an instance based, which I'm not against. If they did that, they would require way more resources than what they have for Hogwarts Legacy. Even for Hogwarts Legacy, they needed more resources for that, if we're being honest. They did a great job of what they had, fantastic job, but they need definitely more resources to truly get what they need to for the second iteration.
But I feel like, do you feel like because they're limiting their gaming to those 4 franchises that they could get those resources? If before they were spreading their resources because they wanted to make all these different games and these different IPs, and then it's like, okay, we only want to focus on these 4, do you think that they could start pulling in more resources because now they're making the decision is that they only want to focus on these 4?
It depends on how their shareholders feel. Because, like, right now, the reason a lot of games are like live game services is because, or games as a service is the proper term, is because shareholders are like, oh, this game can make me money for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years after release, and we can keep reinvesting in it with microtransactions and all of that. A game like Baldur's Gate 3 or a game like Elden Ring, the only reason we got those games is because the studio already had the money. Larian Studios already said we didn't have to rely on shareholders. We created a game we wanted to make. And I think it wasn't Capcom that's behind Elden Ring. I forgot who's the studio behind for Farm Software. They had enough legitimacy and resources due to their older games that they could do what they wanted as well. For Warner Brothers to do this and they get the investment from their shareholders, I don't know. Because their shareholders might be like, oh, you're building a single-player, really nice single-player, story-driven game for Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones and House of Dragon are popular franchises, but we want games as a service. That's when it gets ruined. Because I couldn't even see that being a solid games as a service type of video game.
Yeah.
In terms of what's popping up in my head. Same for Hogwarts Legacy. Hopefully, they don't change anything that Hogwarts Legacy had. The lack of microtransactions and all that, we loved it, but it's a single player game.
Yeah.
They only have like 2 years of life in real life. People buy it. If you drop a DLC, you might get some more money off of it, but that's it. After that first year, probably your sales ain't going up that much. So it really depends on how the shareholders feel about their proposals.
And I would agree. Given what you said, I would agree because I don't know. I don't know if it would be a good decision for them to limit it to those 4 IPs. And I guess we would have to see what they want to do. I feel like Game of Thrones is the one that I guess is the outlier because Harry Potter has Hogwarts Legacy. They did their previous Harry Potter games in the past, but like if we want to talk about now, they have Hogwarts
what
Legacy.
We know has been successful. Yeah.
Right. Mortal Kombat just dropped Mortal Kombat 1, but even before then, the Mortal Kombat games. And then DC, what I read from the article, if they comparing Hogwarts Legacy to the Suicide Squad game, they didn't do too good. But like with it being like the superhero franchise and the superhero game, I can still see them making more. And the fact that they're incorporating some of the DC characters inside of Mortal Kombat and the Injustice series that I hope that they bring back or try to do something else with it. They still have that. Game of Thrones is the only one that in this time period, they haven't tried to do anything with.
Nothing
so when
big,
they
at
do,
least,
right. So when they do try to do something with it, as far as a game, what does that look like? What do we see the longevity of it being? Can it hold up? That's where I don't know.
That's a lot. It's a lot to ask for. There's not a proven success pattern, and I think the only way they could execute on that makes Game of Thrones fans happy and gamers happy is if they did like a more so instance action adventure or open world slash instance RPG or combination action adventure RPG, I don't see anything else working.
Yeah.
I don't see anything else working and reaching the same heights as something like Hogwarts Legacy or these Game of the Year games like Elden Ring and Baldur's Gate. They gotta go high.
Yeah.
Shoot. If they went tabletop mode and did like a Baldur's Gate slick, that could be dope. But that's not, turn-based ain't popular amongst everybody no more.
I was gonna say that, and given the fan base for Game of Thrones, I feel like they would have to do something more than that.
Yeah. I just don't know. I just don't know if I trust Warner Brothers to make like a Witcher game, Dragon's Age, with Shadows of Mordor equivalent. I don't know if I trust them to do that, because I think they did Shadows of Mordor, and they never brought it back. Let me look.
I would just be curious to see, I guess, what's the premise of the game, and what's the time period for it. Because like we said at the beginning of this conversation, they have a lot of freedom with Game of Thrones. And I guess it would just depend on how much of that freedom they take. You got something?
Yeah, I stand corrected. Warner Brothers did make Shadows of Mordor, Middle Earth Shadow of Mordor, which was a Lord of the Rings game. The thing is, if they go for something similar, maybe, but I don't know. Because ever since Shadow of Mordor, I ain't seen them do nothing else similar. I don't know. I don't know if I trust them. I don't know.
We'll see. We'll see if we see someone. We'll see if we see some about a Game of Thrones game. We'll see.
I just know y'all better do Hogwarts Legacy 2 justice. Better. Y'all piss me off with that. I'm raging. I'm raging. They gotta do Hogwarts Legacy 2 justice. Got to.
Maybe honestly, maybe they should focus on that while they try to figure out what to do with Game of Thrones.
And while they figure out what they want to do with DC aside from like a DC fighting game like Injustice.
Now, when you brought up Shadows of Mordor, it reminded me that same studio is supposed to be making them a Wonder Woman game.
Do you trust it?
I haven't gotten a lot. I am excited because we haven't gotten a solo Wonder Woman game. I'm excited on that end.
What vibe are they going for, if you know?
I don't know. They announced it, but we haven't seen any gameplay. I don't know what the premise is. I don't know, like, the time period we're in. Like, what part of Wonder Woman's journey are we focusing on? Is this her early life as Wonder Woman? Is this something later in life? Like, I don't know too much about what's supposed to be coming with this game.
Here's the thing. Warner Brothers has been so hit or miss, honestly. I think one of the studios at Sony would probably be the best to make a decent to good Wonder Woman game, like Insomniac or the studios behind like Horizon, God of War, Insomniac for Spider-Man. I think Sony would probably do a Wonder Woman game enough justice to make most people satisfied.
And I would agree with that, but going back to the fact that they said they want to own all their stuff instead of contract it out.
Yeah.
So
I don't know.
I don't know. I would say I am concerned of how they move forward with Harry Potter and DC. I'm not too worried about Mortal Kombat, to be honest.
It's going to be consistent at the very least, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not too concerned with Mortal Kombat. I think I'm concerned with DC on anything that's not like a fighting game. Now that the Arkham series is done, like where they go after that. And Hogwarts Legacy, I did enjoy it. I'm looking to see what they do next, but I'm not given the product that they put out, I'm not concerned for them doing more with that IP. It's really just Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
It's really just Game of Thrones. And I get why you want to make it a game, because it you know, that's
with why not? House of the Dragon right now, yeah.
Right, why not? But I honestly feel like I'm leaning more to the side of maybe they just leave that an entertainment. Well, I won't, because this technically is entertainment, but more so TV film instead of trying to branch out into video games.
Yeah. And you as a fighting game more so oriented gamer, like you're more so leaning into like arcade game racing and fighting games, would that make you want to play an RPG, like a thick ass RPG like that, kind of like how you were convinced to play Hogwarts Legacy?
You talking about if they
Like
do
if it
it?
was if they do a Game of Thrones RPG oriented game, would that make you want to play like a really deep RPG style game?
Yeah. I mean, it's the same reason why
Okay.
I played Hogwarts Legacy.
Okay. I, they just gotta. If they did it, I would be confident if they said we said F our shareholders and it's not games as a service. If they said those two things, I know they're not saying the first one, but if they at least said it's not games as a service, no microtransactions, I would have hope. I'll have
Yeah.
some hope and optimism.
Well, we would have to see. Because I know that they want to do more with Game of Thrones. Like, remember, I want to say it might have been a year ago, somewhere around the time when House of the Dragon was spinning up, they had announced all of these spin-offs. They had announced the animated series. Like, it sounded like they really wanted to expand Game of
Game of
Thrones.
Thrones universe,
But the
yeah.
only thing we've seen them execute is House of the Dragon. I think some of those spinoffs haven't even got off the ground yet. I think one of the
With the writer
spinoff
strike and all that,
I
yeah.
think one of the spinoffs got canceled, like it's not even happening anymore. And now y'all talking about doing games. In comparison to these other IPs, Game of Thrones is at the bottom of how much, like, the fandom is huge, but as far as like pool, like you giving us proof that you can execute this, Game of Thrones does not have a lot of proof. DC has comic
Yeah.
books, movies, they have presence in pop culture, theme parks, same with Mortal Kombat, same with Harry Potter. Harry Potter got a whole
Yeah.
dedicated land to them in 2
And
countries.
they got a slew of games, even though none of them was like Hogwarts Legacy level. They got a slew of games so people know it's possible.
So, right, they have a lot of products and proof backing them up. Game of Thrones does not.
Yeah. Honestly, for me, because like I know Lord of the Rings had Shadow Mordor, then they had like a MMO back in the day that I played for a little bit. Game of Thrones and Lord of the Rings are in that same boat. They're very old school traditional fantasies. They got some magic. You can pretty much do anything with it, but you need a good writer.
Yeah.
You need a good development team that's focused for 5 years. You need to know what you want out of that combat, and you need to be secure and confident in it being a great single player game.
Tell George
And
R.R. Martin to stop lying to them folks that he's writing that 6th book, and tell him to start writing the story for this game.
look, because he helped out with Elden Ring, but you did all that with Elden Ring, but you didn't do nothing for that book. Where that book at?
He's steady telling people, I'm still writing. Stop lying to them people that you writing that book, and
Look,
let's go do something else.
George R. R. Martin too old to be acting like this.
Stop,
You too old.
stop lying to them people that you writing that book. He keep lying to them people because they mad about their ending. I understand why you lying to them people, but stop lying to them people and let's go do something
Like,
else.
like George, we get it. They messed up your franchise. You ain't that passionate about it. It happens. We get it. It's over with. We at House of the Dragon. We get it. But don't be lying to us.
Yeah.
Just
I
just work on a video game.
I personally feel like he's not writing that book, y'all.
He ain't. How
I
you work on Elden Ring but ain't finish your book?
listen.
And Elden Ring was dope, but how you do that but not write your book?
I understand that you trying to appease the fans because we was pissed, but just go ahead and tell us you not writing that book.
Look,
At this point, you can't be. At this point, you can't be. The final season of Game of Thrones came out in 2019. You can't still be writing that book.
George, Mr. Martin, we love you. Just become a game dev writer. Go
Yeah.
contract yourself out to Warner Brothers. We've seen your potential. We know you're great. Maybe you're just a little burnt out. Do that.
Yeah.
And we'll be happy.
Tell him to go.
I'll be happy.
Let's go focus on their game. They said they making games, George. Let's make sure they do it right.
Yeah.
I don't want to pull up
We'll
and
love
be
you for it.
playing Game of Thrones season 1 in the first installment.
Oh, that'd be horrible. That'd be so bad. Oh, that'd be so bad. That'd be bad. That'd be bad.
And I'm not saying that Apple Music isn't doing it. It's just that I've used Spotify for so long that I've seen how it's evolved and the way that it's learned my music taste. It has evolved with me. I don't want to go backwards, even if you're telling